Lawyers have described it as a human rights black hole. In the 1960s, Britain uprooted inhabitants of a small group of islands in the Indian Ocean to make way for an American military base. It is the only British colony to be established since decolonisation. The Chagos Islanders have been fighting to go home ever since. It was here in 2000 that the islanders won the case to return home. However, just 4 years later, a royal order overturned this ruling. In December last year, the European Court of Human Rights chucked out their case, saying that it wasn't under their jurisdiction. The islanders say they will continue their fight to return home, but they are running out of options.
We are still depending on the United Nations Court of Human Rights, which we have another case, crimes against humanity.
And what after that? What happens if you fail there?
We don't know what we have to do. The UN Court of Human Rights is the last stage which we can reach.
The government has expressed regret for their actions. However, a 2009 WikiLeaks cable from the American Embassy in London suggests they are still trying to prevent resettlement. The cable says Biot's former inhabitants would find it difficult, if not impossible, to pursue their claim for resettlement on the islands if the entire Chagos archipelago were a marine reserve.
Here at Chagos, that's the main island of the Chagos archipelagos. He's the biggest one. That's where the Americans have the military base.
Bernard lives in a small room above a garage in South London. He originally moved to the Seychelles from his home on Diego Garcia and told me he thinks about it every day.
Diego Garcia was home and everything was perfect.
He believes the government is doing everything to stop them returning and that they need to act soon before it's too late.
The Mau Mau case, the case was in undercover in silence, and when these people go forward for their case, it's left only 3, and still up to now the 3 they are getting old. It's a clear indication Sarkozy case is going like that. In the end, there will stay even a single one, and the case will just go like that.
And do you fear that's what will happen in your case?
That's why the British government is dragging our case.
And what do you think to the marine protection zone they've made in 2010?
The marine protection, it's a way to prevent the Sarkozy from resettling in the Chagos archipelagos.
The last year has already seen the death of 2 key campaigners in the Chagos community. They say the grief felt about their deaths is worsened, knowing their dream to return was never realised. Jeanette moved to England with her family a few years ago. She told me she prays every day that she'll be allowed to live back on her island. In documents from the time of the Chagosians' removal, the government advised a policy of quiet disregard and said, in other words, let's forget about this one until the United Nations challenge us on it. The islanders don't feel like their human rights have been considered throughout and want the government to listen to them.
We got a broken heart. Our life is, I don't know, a nightmare. We like a bird without any branch. We got nowhere to go. I don't know. If they can look on our case, at least they can give us a compensation for all this suffering we've been through, so that we can buy a place that we can call it home, because we can't go back home. They not allowed us to go back home, so we wish that we can get a home. We want a home for us, that we can call it our home, because we can't call it our motherland because we don't have it. We're not allowed to go there to visit or to stay. So we want to get a house, a home for us. It's very difficult, but we're trying to go. Me, I would like to go and spend a few days on the island. That's my dream. So that we can wake up on the island, sleep on the island, you know, to feel yourself home. That's my dream.
A few years ago, Jeanette and some others were allowed to revisit the islands for a day. She showed me a video of when they landed back in the place they were born and said she couldn't understand why other people could live there and they couldn't.
Give us back our paradise.
How long had you had to wait until you got this visit?
All our life, 40 something years ago.
The government's mitigation is that they paid the islanders compensation. However, many islanders say they didn't receive any money, and those that did had to forfeit any claim to the islands, something they say they would never have signed had their situation not been so desperate.
It's clear it's a manipulation of justice, which is not fair. They talk about human right. There's no human right. Let's not go deeper. If you take the case of the Chagos, they said in the first instance that there were no native in the Chagos archipelagos. But when we saw to them that the cemetery been engraved the year that these people died and buried on it's clear. That's the facts. That's the evidence. And they can't deny. And even in the European Court of Human Rights, we lose our case. For what reason? They said they paid. They pay compensation to the Chagos. But the Chagos of Seychelles never received even a penny. There's no human rights. When they talk about human rights, no fairness in human rights. It's clear.
The islanders and their supporters claim the UK have suppressed information about the events in the 60s. I surveyed a group of 100 people from different demographics, ages and areas, and only 4 people said they knew about the sovereignty dispute over the islands, and 4 out of 73 people who answered my later question knew about the Chagos Islanders' desire to return home. Both parties within the coalition government promised to rectify the situation if in power. Foreign Secretary William Hague said, "I can assure you that if elected to serve as the next British government, we will work to ensure a fair settlement of this long-standing dispute." Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg said, "The Liberal Democrats take the view that removing the Chagosians in the 1960s was a scandalous decision, and this government has continued to mistreat these people." Nick and the Liberal Democrats believe that the government has a moral responsibility to allow these people to at last return home. However, I spoke to the Foreign Office for an update on their plans for resettlement. They promised to work with the community, but also said, "We cannot put back the clock, and the arguments against allowing resettlement are very clear and compelling. This is not only about our security commitments, but also about the very feasibility of re-establishing a settlement on these remote and low-lying islands." But some in positions of influence are fighting for the Chagosian cause. This MP says he is disappointed by the government's hypocrisy and inaction.
They can't really complain about human rights abuses in other places, Zimbabwe for example, which is suspended from the Commonwealth, or other places, if at the same time they don't put their own house in order where the overseas territories are concerned. So read the WikiLeaks stuff, read the expose stuff about description of the islanders as man Fridays and arrogant racist nonsense like that, and you begin to see what we're up against.
The community remain hopeful that one day they will be able to go back for good and live near to the graves of their ancestors.
I will be among the first to go back to my native land. From that day, I think that my life will change completely. I will be called me a real Bernard, not like the one that you see in front of you.
The community say they're running out of time and avenues to gain justice. With almost 50 years since their removal from the islands, they're calling on the British government once more to finally uphold their promises and allow them to return home. Anya Pop in London for QMTV News.